This recording is protected by copyright. No part may be reproduced without the prior permission of the University of South Australia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacinta Thompson, and I'm the Executive Director and Events and Exhibitions Producer for the Bob Hawke Prime Ministerial Centre. I would like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is Kaurna land, and we wish to express our respect for the Kaurna people, their elders and ancestors, and acknowledge the spiritual and cultural relationship the Kaurna people have with their traditional land. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here tonight to the 2021 ARA and Hawke Centre conversation, Levelling the Playing Field, the Refugee Reality in Sport. The Hawke Centre and the University of South Australia is pleased to be co-presenting tonight's event with the Australian Refugee Association, and I would like to thank Deb Stringer, CEO of ARA, and her team for the wonderful work in making this event coming to fruition. I would also like to welcome His Excellency, the Honourable Hugh Van Lay AC, Governor of South Australia, Pauline Carr, Chancellor, University of South Australia, Catherine Kingston, President of the Australian Refugee Association. An amazing supporter of this event and of both our organisations is the Patron-in-Chief of the Hawke Centre and the Australian Refugee Association, His Excellency the Honourable Hugh Van Lay AC, Governor of South Australia. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency to the stage to open the 2021 ARA and Hawke Centre conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for your warm welcome. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. I think you're attending every year. So did I. And I see you every time it's coming to the oration. One of the highlights of my annual calendars. Let me start by acknowledging the Chancellor of this university so generously accommodating the oration so many years, Ms. Pauline Carr. Thank you. Of course, Mr. Norman Schuler, the Chairman of SAMIAC, is here with us. Jacinta Thompson, the Executive Director of the Centre. Ms. Catherine Kingston, the President of ARA. And I noticed David Lin, also here, the previous President of ARA, here with us. Ms. Deb Stringer, the CEO of ARA. And all the speakers here tonight. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're gathering here tonight, the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with the country. I'm so pleased to join you to launch this year 2021 ARA oration, Levelling the Playing Field, the Refugee Reality in Sport. What a wonderful title, and very intriguing to hear what's something that we may learn from. There's no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, in Australia, sport is an integral part of our DNA. Whether as a participant or spectator, it brings us together, allows us to extend ourselves. It engenders pride and confidence. Sport enables us to contribute and to provide a sense of belonging, no matter our level of achievement. The ways in which sport brings us the friendship, the support, the teamwork, a sense of place and belonging are indeed at the core of the wider work of the Australian Refugee Association. My wife and I have always remained grateful for the support, the assistance, the friendship that were afforded to us by the ARA's forerunner, the Indo-Chinese Refugee Association, when we first arrived in Adelaide as refugees. We freshly, a group of boat people arriving in Darwin Harbour, and a week later, in the early morning, November 1977, we arrived in Adelaide Airport, cold, exhausted, bewildering of what's happening to us, but so enthusiastic and elated by the warm welcoming. When they settled us into Penitent Hostel, Lan and I was given a small compartment within the Nissan hut. And at that very night, we heard a knock on the door. And when we opened the door, a person, very tall person, and say, I'm from the Indo-Chinese Refugee Association. I'm here to help. Anything I can help, please let me know. Imagine for the moment, a person who survived the war on the journey of so dangerous on the sea, spending months in the refugee camps, dreadful, without much thing to live in for. And then another journey to Australia, which is many times near death. And then someone come to you and say, I want to help you. It's just something that we are so grateful and indebted to that. You feel the confidence, that you feel that there is someone here you care about you. Because previously nobody seemed to do that. We seem to think that these societies have someone who really look after you, someone, the friends, someone that you can confide on, and someone you can share, and someone who make you feel you are part of this society, you're part of this community. And very early on in my role, I was pleased to accept, without any hesitation, to become the patron of the Australian Refugee Association and, of course, the Bob Hawke Prime Ministerial Centre. It has been an honour to have engaged with you both over the time and witnessed the important role both have played in our community. The journey of a refugee to a new country is perilous enough, but once here, there is another different journey with the different challenges, with the different difficulties and that we have to overcome. One of gaining a sense of belonging, finding a place where people can contribute fully to their community and thrive with a sense of purpose. I thank those volunteers and the staff at ARA for continuing your passion, your care and commitment to others for more than 45 years. As a new arrivals, people can brush up or learn a new language and eventually navigate their way around government rules and systems and all of that. But the nuances of Australian life can't be taught in the class. They have to be experienced. They have to be absorbed over the time, and it takes time. It's invaluable to have someone to guide you through the way to help others to understand unwritten rules in the society. So tonight, we will hear from speakers who will provide us with an insight into their experiences and thoughts as to why sports participation rates for refugee and culturally and linguistically diverse groups members significantly lower than the general population. I'm sure that they will challenge our thinking and spark discussion on how we can break down barriers, both those that are structural and those that are perhaps unknowingly ingrained. I would like to take this opportunity to thank ARA and of course Jacinta Thompson's very hardworking for this Hawke Centre for staging these annual orations. By sharing personal stories and insights, we can generate ideas, we can empathize and different perspective with a different perspective and strive to ensure that Australia continuing to be an inclusive society, a society and giving a fair go for all. I also offer my congratulations to Bob Hawke Ministerial Centre and University of South Australia for their commitment to continuing offer the forum for discussion and to exchange knowledge and challenging our view, our thought on many, many important topics that affect our daily life. You are helping to build a stronger, a harmonious community. It now, ladies and gentlemen, gives me a great pleasure to launch this year's oration. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and again, many thanks for your support. So, is sport really the great leveller? On the surface, the same rules apply to all participants, uniting people from every age, race and cultural background. But sports participation rates for refugee and culturally and linguistically diverse groups are significantly lower than the general population. What unwritten rules and unacknowledged barriers do these groups face, and how can they be overcome? Tonight's conversation will shed light on these important questions. Each of our speakers will be invited to the stage to share their stories and will then participate in a panel discussion. Unfortunately, Mohamed Touré is unable to be here for tonight's conversation due to his soccer commitments. But we have to be proud about that. So he sends his apologies. So, to start the ball rolling, it is my pleasure to invite Bruce Jete to the stage. Bruce is a former Australian Socceroo football player and is currently the Director of Football at Adelaide United. He will soon be taking on a new role as CEO of the Committee for Adelaide. Congratulations, Bruce, on that as well. That's brilliant news. So with that, please join me in welcoming Bruce. Thank you.
I would like to begin by acknowledging the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, I have had a very interesting and a very fortunate life up until now. I'm not that old. But I was born in the States. My parents are from Côte d'Ivoire and Togo, West African countries. My dad's parents were farmers. They tended the land. But my dad was curious, asked a lot of questions, keen on education. So keen, he ended up going to university in Côte d'Ivoire and ended up having a scholarship in the United States to finish his studies. He has a PhD in linguistics and ended up being a lecturer at Georgetown University. Arlington, Virginia is where me and my two brothers were born. I have an older brother and a younger brother who now reside in New York. And after my dad got an offer to come to Sydney and work at Sydney University, we shifted to Australia. I was only 2.5 years old. It wasn't until I was 6 and we went back to Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan, where we were there for about 4 or 5 months and everyone was playing this game. I had no idea what this game was. But I also had no mates. And I thought, well, if I want to make some friends, we went to school and, if I want to make some friends, I better get involved in this game that everyone's playing. And it was very stereotypical. I remember it like it was yesterday. Dirt roads, dirt fields, cinder block type bricks for goals, roll up socks or whatever you can to create a ball, and off you went and played. They played before school, they played at recess, they played at lunch, they played after school, and I joined in, and I really enjoyed it. And when we were on the flight back home to Sydney, Australia, 3 or 4 months later, I asked my dad on the plane, I still remember vividly, do they play this game in Australia? He said, yes, of course they do. I said, fantastic, I want to join a team, which I did. Linfield Soccer Club, my first team. I think my experiences through school, my experiences to date have been very positive here in Australia. And that is down to sport, in my opinion. Sport is the lifeblood of Australia. It didn't take much but COVID to teach us how important sport was. People missed the AFL and they missed the elite sports, but people missed most the grassroots sports. The the ability for kids to play with one another. It is, for me, the best education you can possibly have. When you lose on the weekend, you still go to training the next week. When you win on the weekend, you learn to win graciously. When you fail your maths exam, or you're struggling with a subject at school, that resilience you've built on the sporting field, that camaraderie, the team philosophy and ethos that you learn in team sports especially, really build a solid platform for your overall well-being, and it certainly did for me. I would put the education of football above the education of any institution and above the education of all else. It was interesting when I was about 14 and football started to become very serious. I used to train in Parklea. We lived on the North Shore in Sydney. The M2 existed, but you got off at, I think it was Old Windsor Road, and there was lights, and it was a good hour drive to and from training each way. And my dad and I would have these running discussions, we call them, where he'd say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You've got to concentrate on school. He's a professor at university, of course, he's come from a farm in Côte d'Ivoire, so of course he's going to have that view. All his friends wanted to be professional footballers, none of them made it. It's a sorry tale for a lot of youth in developing countries. So for him it was, no. We've worked so hard to arrive here. You will not throw it all away on this dream of being a professional footballer. And I understood where he was coming from. I understand it more now, having my own children, but I did understand a little bit where he was coming from back then. But as football progressed, and as I started to move around and become professional and live all around the world, it really taught me even more than I even ever knew. I lived in Ankara, Turkey for 2 years. I lived in Jiangsu in China for 1. I lived in Suwon in South Korea for 2 years, and Makassar, Indonesia for 1. Pretty lucky, pretty diverse. It's taught me a lot. And I look at everything through a global lens. And whether you've come as a migrant or whether you've endured the hardship on a boat and come as a refugee, as His Excellency explained to us before, the ability to look at decision-making and take decisions in life through a global lens, and the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, for me, is paramount. Because there's a lot of negative in this world, and a lot of it comes from the inability for people to put themselves in other people's shoes. And with the inability to do that, it is very difficult to then have empathy for anyone not as well off as all of us lucky people in this room today. We're in a fantastic country with limitless opportunities. Others aren't so privileged. And I'm so grateful that I've had all those experiences. And if you are a refugee, be grateful that you've had those experiences. It builds resilience. You're not born with it. Resilience is only built through hardship, overcoming hurdles, facing challenges, not once, not twice, again and again and again. Awa Mabil, Ruan Tonyik, Mohamed Toure, Alassane Toure, Pacific Nyongabiri, just a few names that have played for the Adelaide United Football Club. Just a few individuals who've overcome struggles, who've overcome hardship to become professional athletes or to represent their country. Fantastic achievements. And people often say to me, do you take, this role model role because of the colour of your skin? Do you feel a responsibility to your community? Does that impact the way I act? Of course it does. It has since I was here. I remember being dropped off at school and my dad telling me before I got out the car, be the best one here. Justify why you are here. And that is a story that I hear many migrants have the same. And there have been waves and waves of migrants. You had the Vietnamese, you had the Italians and Greeks post-World War II. And they've all had a significant impact, positive impact, on the social fabric that makes up this country. Asians do really well at school. They did at my school. They work exceptionally hard. Harder than a lot of us. Why? Because, I don't know why, but when you come from outside in, you always want to prove that you're better than what's already here. Being a foreign player in different countries where there's a quota, a limit on the number of foreigners that are allowed to play in teams, adds extra scrutiny, adds extra responsibility, because you're taking one of their jobs. And with that, you carry that burden, but again, through my upbringing and the same discussion with my dad, justify why we are here. I've tried to do that throughout my life, everywhere I've lived. Is sport a great leveller? Yes and no. Yes, it gave those players I named before the opportunity to have a very full life and to achieve great things. Without sport, I wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't have the life I have today, a very, very good one. But as soon as I got into my role as football director at Adelaide United, one of the first calls that came was from Underdale High School. Public school with very diverse multicultural background. Why did I get the call? Because their football team had been subjected to racist abuse by another school during a game. And some of these teenagers don't know how to deal with it. So what do? They get aggressive, they get violent. Unfortunately, I had to go to that school to discuss this and explain to them how they can channel their energy for good. I was lucky. People ask me all the time, do you experience racism? What did you do when someone said this or someone did that? And that's where sport becomes the leveller. I'm a lucky one. I never experienced anything directly at me. Because sport's such a big part of Australian life, if you're good at sport, you tend to be relatively popular through school. That's where it becomes the leveller. However, there are gaps. I have a strong belief in sport that it can be a very good vehicle to close those gaps. It is possible, and sport does do it, overwhelmingly so. But there's barriers to entry. My son is 6. He plays under 7s soccer. It costs $1,000 a year. And I'm the coach. So I'm not even paying for a coach. I'm doing it voluntarily. One of the first groups that came and saw me when I took up the role as Director of Football was the African Communities Council of South Australia. They hold a big tournament every year, but everyone has to pay $60-odd to play. And that, within itself, is a barrier to entry for a lot of these people. Of course, there's a cost to sport. You have to cover insurance, and there's organisations that need security and lights and all the rest of it. But cost is a serious barrier in terms of soccer, football, the sport I love. Facilities is another issue. There's a huge drop-off in teenagers playing sport, and clearly we all know that culturally and linguistically diverse communities have a lower participation rate. Yes, it's cost. It's also facilities. I remember being at a workshop with the Office of Recreation and Sport, and the lady who got a grant from Border Town. They had a Muslim contingent of women who didn't know how to swim. But they couldn't learn how to swim because they couldn't swim when men were present. They shut the pool just so the women could swim and learn how to swim for a few hours every day. And I thought that was fantastic. That's when sport, that's the beauty of it. That's what it can do. But we all need to work together to make sure the barriers that are set are broken down and taken down. I'm most grateful for the beautiful game because sport is for everyone. I always have and will strive to make sport, and especially football, accessible for everyone. It should be a welcoming, safe, and inclusive space. And if we all work together, I'm sure it will be and continue to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Born in Afghanistan, Halima Alizadeh came to Australia when she was 25 years old. Halima began surf lifesaving after attending an advanced resuscitation techniques course shortly after arriving in Australia. She has a strong interest in swimming and surf lifesaving and loves meeting new people and learning new things while celebrating and embracing the differences of people from all walks of life. Please join me in welcoming Halima.
Good evening, everyone. I've been invited to speak with you about my own situation, experience in sport. Firstly, let me tell you a little bit about my own situation and background. I grew up in a small village in Afghanistan during the time of conflict there. Sadly, my brother and I were left because of the war. Our education was interrupted. As the older child, I took care of my younger brother. We were brought to Australia and were helped by a youth service here to find housing and food. In time, we were introduced to the Welcoming Center, which helped us with food and other forms of support. Our enrollments at Tibetan Senior College helped us with our English and get us on the right path with our final years of secondary education. I'm so proud of my brother Sajjad, who is now studying at university. Whilst I was doing year 11 and 12, I really loved the physical education subjects, including hiking, camping, and AFL football. These loves of sport opened up the opportunity for me to play women's AFL in the community. We were trained by a coach who played for Adelaide Crows AFL women's team. The team members were from all over Adelaide, and although I was an asylum seeker, I wore the same uniform and felt like I was an equal with these other girls. Playing sport helped me to handle the stress of waiting for my permanent residency, the pressure of providing nutritious meals for my brother, studying a language that was not for my first language, and keeping safe. At Tibetan, I met a kind and encouraging man called Peter Tyler. He supported my friend and I to become involved with the West Beach Surf Lifesaving Club. In the beginning, it was a strange experience to be at the beach, coming from a village in the middle of Afghanistan, nowhere near the sea. We were taught to swim every Saturday morning and then introduced to basic Surf Lifesaving Club. It became more than learning new skills. We were part of a team. We were doing something that helped others. We took our turn on patrol, and again, the uniform, the teamwork, the responsibility helped us to feel we were a real part of Australian society. One of my experiences at Tibetan Senior College involved a camp and learning water sports. Again, the same thing happened. It didn't matter that I came from a different country. It didn't matter that I didn't have lots of money or that my first language was different from English. When I was in a team, I felt equal with everyone else. Through this sporting and outdoor education experience, I learned about teamwork. My communication skills improved and I grew in my confidence. What I also learned was that when we focus on the same goal in these activities, we are all equal. Every member of the team is important. This learning has really helped me in my employment, and I am very grateful for having played Women's AFL and very happy to continue to train as a surf lifesaver. Sometimes I think people who have come to Australia as a refugee or asylum seeker may find it difficult to become involved in sport because they think they have to speak English perfectly. Or in some cases, they may not be able to afford the fees to play or the uniforms they have to pay for, or even purchasing the right shoes. Water sport may be difficult for them because they never grew up by the sea and can't swim. I'm an example of someone who learned to swim here. And look now, I am a lifesaver and training to teach swimming. Although the way I could not have done any of these without being encouraged by the people at the Welcoming Center and Peter Tyler. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Halima. Our next speaker is Nada Ibrahim, co-founder of One Culture Football. Born in Egypt, Nada migrated to Australia in 2009 as an international student. He previously helped develop one of Adelaide's most successful youth programs known as Football Life, a grassroots football program which saw over 200 children from diverse cultures and backgrounds unite through the world game. The program won the City of Adelaide's Champion of Inclusion Award in 2017. Nada has strong relationships in the Egyptian and Muslim community in South Australia and has been active in many community events. Please join me in welcoming Nada. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm going to run into a little bit of two little stories of who I am. And the two little stories happened with me when I came to Australia. So, as mentioned, I was born in Egypt. I was born into a very average family in a very average town in an average state, but in a fantastic country. I am Egyptian and I'm proud. I studied all school, went to university, did a bachelor degree in journalism. Never happened to work as a journalist because things don't usually work that way over there. So, but I got the chance to come to Australia. 2009, I was 27 years of age. Mature, could speak English perfectly, confident, no problems. I had a brother here as well. He helped me to come here. So, 8th of May, 2009, he picks me up from the airport, Adelaide Airport, in the morning. On the way home, he asks me one question: "Are you going to play football?" I was like, "Yeah, of course, no worries." Wednesday night, we go to the shops, we buy football boots. Thursday evening, I go to my first football training. I just landed yesterday. Why not? He said, "You got about a month until your course starts, so what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to play football." Wow. No worries. He takes me to his former club. He wasn't playing that year. He's a much better player than me. And what that did to me, you guys will find out in a second. So he takes me to the club, and then everybody sees him. His name is Mohammed. Mo, great to see you. He wasn't playing that season. He was just not participating for that season. This is my brother. He just landed, and he wants to play football. They assumed that I'm going to be as good as my brother, and I was so welcomed. And yeah, no worries. I got new boots, fresh boots, looking fresh. Everything is brand new. Okay, come join the training. Join the training. Did well. I landed on a good time. They were like, short on strikers. The coach goes to me like, "How you feeling? Are you jet lagging or anything?" I was like, "No." I was like, "Are you ready to play on the weekend?" I was like, "Let's play on the weekend. Let's do it. Get on." I start. Usually when you have a fresh player like that, you put him on the bench. No, I start. I scored a goal. Wow. Who is that? I can hear it from that's Mo's brother. Fantastic. I've been in the country for 4 days. and I scored a goal. Playing in an amateur club, nothing professional, nothing serious. I'm already 27, so if you're 27 in sport, you're too old. So I'm just playing the game that I love. And that's what I got back. And then, finished on the weekend. When is next training? I'm asking Mohammed, my brother. He's like, yeah, it's next week. I'll tell you, I'll take you. I go there and I walk into the club. And suddenly, so many people know my name. And I'm just like, hey, boys, how you going? I'm somebody out of nowhere, yeah? I feel like I'm here, I'm home. Fast forward 7 years. I am now finished. I finished my study. I am married. I am an Australian citizen. I'm confident as hell. I'm good. And I haven't been playing club football for a while because I had so much commitment. But I was playing, futsal, little tournaments here and there, but nothing like really. But I missed playing in a league and being part of a team as such and going to trainings every week and playing on the weekend and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'll go back. I was living then within the eastern area. So I looked around for one of the clubs. I went, hey guys, this is who I am. I would like to join the team. Yeah, coach said, okay, no problems. We're training these days at this time, just come. And I walked in. No one knew who I was. Mohammed wasn't there to introduce me. They have no idea who I was. So I felt very awkward. And I felt very weird, like no one is taking interest to ask me who I was and what was my name. And okay, started doing the warm-ups and started here and there. And then we started playing. And that's when people started taking interest. This guy actually could play. And then somebody asked me like, where are you from? I said, I'm Egyptian. Mohammed Salah is one of the best players in the world now. He's Egyptian. I lied. I told him he was my cousin. He was then playing at Roma, and I was playing in the eastern suburbs, so lots of Italians. So it worked perfectly. And then suddenly I started being okay. But believe me, my point, where I'm going with this 1 hour or an hour and a half of that first training session at that club when I wasn't known, I felt like, it is nothing against anyone in the club or any individual, but just you didn't have that support, you didn't have that confidence, you feel like there's something missing. But once we started playing the game, once we were on the field, once I told my little lie, things were much better, thanks to football. And I then, after I went home, I spoke to my wife and I said to her, my wife was born in Afghanistan. She was born in Pakistan in a refugee camp. When she was 8 or 9 months, she came to Australia. So she'd never been back to Afghanistan. Both parents are Afghans, but she lived all her life here. And she went through, all of the schools and university, and she works at one of the government departments, and she's more confident than me. Meet my wife. And then I told her, like, I found this, it was very, very awkward. Let alone, imagine if I was 14 or 16, and I just landed off a boat. I have no support whatsoever. And I just decided I want to play football. I went to that same exact club. And let's say I had money, so I can afford it. And then I got that silence treatment of some sort, or nobody came and tapped me on the shoulders like, hey, where are you from? I haven't seen you around here before. Come on, what's your name? Come on, let me, anything. Nothing. What would that have done to a 14, 15, 16 years old boy? Barely speaks English. Confidence? I'm not sure about that. Football skills? Maybe good, but this is on its own is not enough. This is what I think. My message to all of us today, whether you are from a culturally and linguistically diverse background, or if you were born here, whether you play sport or you don't, help somebody to participate. It starts with us. The attitude that we show people the attitude that we show people and the welcoming attitude we show people. When I see somebody for the first time in this place and I haven't seen this person before, just go and ask them. This question saying, hey, how you going? Are you okay? Would you like any help? That could make a world of difference to them. Just show them that you care. It might not be a whole heap of things that you could do for them. You could be a stranger yourself into a new place, and then you both find each other, and then you guys can help each other as well. So, inclusion. Make sure you include anybody that's around. Fast forward to what I do now. Don't have much time. One Culture Football. I decided I want to do something like this. I met another crazy person like myself. He lives and breathes football. He's originally from Sydney, down here at Adelaide United, doing some training, and then want to do something. We started a little program that went viral, won an inclusive championship award, blah, 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 in the city. Fantastic. And then suddenly all of that was going to have to stop because now it's a new year and it's a different directions for the companies and stuff. We left our jobs, both of us. My wife then was pregnant. And I just, that's my timer saying you're almost done. And we started One Culture Football. Why? Because we wanted to create this safe space, inclusive space. That's for free. We will bring the money, we will do our work somewhere, we'll get the money from some sort of a local government or a state government or a federal government. Children, that's not your problem. This is our problem. We will get the money, we will roll the ball. We will make an inclusive and safe environment for you. All we want from you to come and enjoy yourselves and get all of the benefits of being included in a healthy, safe environment that help you stay on the right path. A lot of these kids, had there not been this opportunity for them to be part of the sport after school, they would have otherwise been on the little alleyways of the city, and the stories goes on. This is all from me for now. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nada, and for all the great work you're doing as well. It's wonderful. So, our final speaker is Anyier Yuol. There she is. Hello. Born in a Kenyan refugee camp, Anyier moved to Australia at the age of 10. Founder and CEO of Miss Sahara and Anyier Model Management. She's an advocate for women's and girls' rights, refugee and gender equality, sport for development, youth participation, and improving representation of minority groups in Australia through diversity and inclusion advocacy. Now, Anyier was due to travel to Adelaide from Sydney, but due to, I'm going to call it the C word, current travel and border restrictions, she is unable to be here in person, but we are thrilled she can join us via Zoom. Please join me in welcoming Anyier. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and I am so jealous that I'm not there with everyone tonight. I was looking forward to it, but I am glad that I'm able to make it and be part of this important conversation. Before I can start, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional land, traditional owners of which I am in, the Direct people. I pay my respect to the elders of the community and extend my recognition to the descendants who are present, and also to any Indigenous person who is present tonight with us. As mentioned, my name is Anyier Yuol, and foremost, I am a former refugee. I grew up in Australia, but if there's two things that I can align myself tonight as I give this presentation, is that being born in a refugee camp and sport has become a part of me and why I am who I am today. I never understood the benefit of sport because I never actually played sport when I was in the camp until I moved to Australia. And I guess the conversation and why I was so thrilled when I was asked to join is that being part of the sport community has contributed to so much, and the work that I have done so far, it has granted me to be the woman I am, and it allowed me to extend my service to other communities who might need that support within the community. So as I mentioned, my background is, if I haven't mentioned yet, my background is South Sudanese. I was born in a refugee camp and then moved to Australia when I was 10 years old. Sport has become a significant part of my journey, and it started when I was struggling in school. Now, if most might be aware, as refugees, we are not lucky when it comes to basic needs. And so when I was spending my first 10 years in a refugee camp, I don't think I ever played any sport at all, let alone have the education that I ever wanted. And so moving to Australia, I was struggling to really maintain and be part of the education system because I was far behind to the local communities. And that's how sport came in for me. The sport came in as a champion and something that grounded me. I'm a huge football fanatic, but it was never that way. My love and affair of sport started with cricket, which it seemed a bit odd for my family at the time when I said I was playing cricket. And I remember the first response that I heard back from my family was like, we don't see any women playing cricket on television. And that was the disencouragement for them to stop me from playing sport. But I didn't let that allow me to stop. As I started high school, and I acknowledged that I was still struggling in school, that I didn't want to participate in school activities at all. I remember a family member of our friends came to me and said, Anyier, you know what? We need to get you involved in a different sport that you might love. And that was soccer. I got introduced to soccer, and I love the sport that I start to sleep and I eat soccer. Within 2 years, I was representing my local club at district. The next stage, I was playing for state league. And from there, I knew that if I was not going to participate in school curriculum, if I knew that I was not going to succeed and keep up with the local communities, I wanted something to ground me. And that's something, it was that I wanted to become a professional soccer player. And this is how my journey started. So I start playing soccer and I start finding my confidence. I start finding my voice, and I start to understand the importance of that game. And not just soccer, but when you are participating in sport, what it looked like in your eye and the other communities. And so I really start to enjoy it. But it was never an easy opportunity for me. I came from a cultural background that women were not allowed to play sport. And one of those challenges was imposed on me, and it limited my opportunities to really participate in this sport environment. However, because I was determined to really do well in sport, in particular soccer, I pushed the boundary within my communities. I made sure that I was trying to explain to them the benefit of soccer, the benefit of sport, and why I should be allowed to play. As years go by, as I came into year 9 and year 12, I was then introduced to an organization called Football United. At that time, Football United was developing some programs in the Western Sydney. And those programs were targeting migrants or people of cultural and linguistic background to participate in the sport industry. I turned up in that organization, and we had the opportunity to be selected and participate in the Football for Hope Festival during the 2010 World Cup. That journey was a mark for me to see the benefit. But for me, it was a struggle within my communities. In one area, I was fighting to try and fit into a sport industry with a lack of an understanding that was being given to my community, to my family. And also, I was not understanding the reason behind why my communities or my family didn't want me to play. But I was determined, as I mentioned earlier before, and as I gradually grew up and started to understand and navigate some of the challenges within the communities, I knew that there was a lack of education around this and a lack of advocacy to be able to navigate communities, to understand it from different perspectives and from different backgrounds. Upon my arrival back from South Africa during that competition, I was injured very bad in South Africa. And so when I came back with a new vision. I came back with the ability to make sure that whatever the opportunity that I get, I would take that and I'll turn it into education so then I can educate my community and to educate the wider Australian communities with some of the challenges that communities might face, and for them to understand why sport is significant, but as well, why is it so hard for communities to support their kids when they start. And so when this happened, I came back and I was given a scholarship to the University of Nice as well. That scholarship was a foundation for who I am. That scholarship gave me the education and the tools for me to be advocate, not just in my personal life, and for all the communities who were willing to advocate on their kids as well. That education allowed me to then go back into my community and understood it from my personal advocacy. Why was it a challenging for me? And what can we do now better to then make sure that the next generation of cultural and linguistic communities are being able to participate in the industry without feeling that their voice don't matter. And that has been a foundation of why I am still passionate about soccer, because I believe that sports and educations are two. In order for a community to understand the benefit of certain things, there must be an education, there must be an advocacy to allow the communities to understand the benefit, the negative, and the challenges. I used to think that my community were the problem. I used to blame them. When I got injured in South Africa, I wanted to blame the whole communities. And it took education for me to understand and to navigate the conversation willingly and allow to listen to people. And so my work today revolves around advocacy and being able to create some safe space for people to have conversation, and to definitely have platforms such as this to talk about some of the challenges that we don't speak about. And I think communities from linguistic background, cultural and linguistic background, have many barriers within this sport field. And these conversations are definitely a key. And I'm excited to be part of the panel later and contribute more into the discussion.
Thank you, Anyier, for your great insight and sharing your story.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Nadir.
Yes.
Why was it important for you to start One Culture Football?
Through the years I've been here, I've seen some personal experiences, as I explained, but through the work in the community services, I've done a lot of work within the disability, within the mental health, and most of it was within the new arrivals and refugees program. And I've seen a lot of young me coming into the country. I just see myself in their youth, and I see how much they love the sport and they want to play, but the opportunities wasn't there. And I see a lot of things could be enhanced in their lives just by giving them the chance to play the sport they love. This was a great driver for me.
And I can honestly vouch for One Culture Football. Adelaide United Football Club does a lot with your organisation, and you guys do a fantastic job in the community.
100%. Adelaide United, and again, when we started this one, like, we wanted to create that platform, that environment, that place to actually stay. So one of the things that we've done, we went straight away to Adelaide United. We said, we know how much you guys would love to do for football, but your focus is on the likes of Mohammed and Al Hassan, and working most of the time on them to become on the elite level. So the grassroots, the community, is something that the club would do, but it's never enough of. We said, this is what we want to do, and we can use a lot of help from you guys. And that's what's been happening. I can actually say that there is an alliance, if you like, between Adelaide United and One Culture Football in delivering the community work that we're doing.
And Halima, I'll come to you. Have you become comfortable as a culturally and linguistically diverse woman in the surf lifesaving community?
Well, yes, I feel like I belong to the West Beach Surf Lifesaving Club, and I'm proud to take my turn on patrols, and I know the surf lifesaving is an important contribution for the community.
Thank you. Anyier, I'll come to you next. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
What do you think some significant barriers are for culturally and linguistically diverse women in sport?
I think there are many barriers when we talk about, if we are looking at the grassroots sports industry, we can start from just, as I mentioned earlier in my speak, from just the cultural barriers that the communities might face from their own communities, particularly for women who are coming from a background where they are not allowed to play sport, or it's not recognized, they don't understand the benefit of it. But also, we're talking about financial limitation as well. It has become a huge thing. I don't know if anyone knows, but the registration are numerous in the local communities in the sport industry. So those are just a few barriers that women and communities from linguistic and cultural background face. But if we talking in general and taking it more now to states and national, we're looking at the structural, we're looking at this socio-cultural background and the structural system that limited them. It were, example again, women who might not have spaces where they can train safely, where the structures that are in place within the sport clubs doesn't cater to them as well. Those could be barriers that stop them from participating within sport. So I think we have to look at from a local grassroots communities who are getting involved in sport, looking how they are getting involved from financial point of view to transportation to structure, and then moving out to more of the national. There are many issues that underpin policy gaps as well that need to be looked at.
And I can concur with that. I think that the two things I see most as barriers are the cost, that's for sure, but also the infrastructure. Because, you know, when you're a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old, you don't really care what you look like, you don't really care what you smell like, you just go about your business and you love life. But I think especially for females, and I'm a bit loath to speak on behalf of females, but when you're 14, 15, 16, and you start to care what you smell like, and you start to care what you look like, yeah. You know, you don't want to look sweaty and smell on the back of, you know, playing a football game or playing a cricket game or whatever. And that's a societal construct, there's no doubt about that. How we go about changing that, I don't have the answers. But on the infrastructure, you also want good change rooms. You do not Absolutely. Want to fit in a change room where there's one toilet and a huge urinal. Right? And these are some of the issues that a lot of stakeholder groups and individuals bring to my attention. And it's definitely something, when you talk about policy, that I believe needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to that. I think even, as I mentioned, most of my advocacy have been around supporting women in so many of these platforms and growing up playing sport through local club to state. I can definitely see the impact of infrastructure that have limited women from participating. And we're talking communities that really want to get involved. And when you don't have infrastructure that support them, they are disencouraged. And that, I think, it's something that need to be factored in from a structure base, and communities really need to be aware of some of these decisions so then people can work together as well.
Halima, if I could come back to you, is there any advice you would give someone from a culturally and linguistically diverse background in preparing to get involved in surf lifesaving particularly?
What really helped me actually, encouraging by Peter Tyler, who is a mentor of us, and I would like to advise anyone who don't swim, who is an asylum seeker and refugee, they can come and join us whenever they want. If they need anything, any help, they could ask the club if they would like.
And how did you meet Peter? He sounds like he had a big influence on your life. So.
Yeah, actually he's a good man. I really loved him. But I met him at school actually when I was at year 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Nada, is there a difference in attitude towards training young girls or boys from a community or parental level?
Yes, it was a bit of a challenge at the beginning because when I was a child, when I was going to play football, my mum says, make sure you don't break that leg, because if you do, I'll break the second one when you come back. So I'm pretty sure other mums here say that to their kids. So, man, I'm not going to be a doctor, Mum, just leave it there. I'm just going to play football. And we actually seen a few parents at the very, very beginning, like now every Wednesday and every Tuesday, the kids are not coming home until it's almost dark, and we're playing football. Some parents decided to actually come and check it out for themselves, and then they saw what's happening, and they were happy. And then we started seeing more positive attitude. We're actually very happy for the kids to be part of what we have created. At least they know they are in a safe environment and they are enjoying themselves and being well looked after as well.
We had some pre-prepared questions. We would have liked to have a roaming mic, but thanks to the C word, we've been unable to do that. But there's some questions for the group here. What mental health strategies, and either one of you feel free to jump in on answering this one, what mental health strategies have you used personally to deal with difficult situations, personally or professionally?
Just belief. My strategy to cope with mental health, any sort of mental health, we go through ups and downs. Whenever the time it's downtime, I take that from sport. You start a game and you're down, you're losing, and then you actually come back and you overcome it and you win. So I keep believing in myself that I can do this. No matter what, no matter how much of a hardship it may look like now, no matter how it may sound like this is never going to end, eventually it will, and the sun will come up tomorrow. So believe in yourself. This is my strategy when it comes to personal. When it comes to work life, business, one culture, football, again, I take that it's my professional development now. I learn something every day and I help people every day. And on the other hand, a lot of other people help me every day. So my strategy for that is I know that there is always something good out there, and make sure you be something good to someone else, because the more you do good, it's only going to come back to you when you need it.
100% agree, that was fantastic. I mean, personally for me, I always say, and I say to my son, who's 6 now, but I've been telling him since he was about 3, and my daughter the same, I always say you need to control the voice in your head. I think it is one of the most important skill sets that anyone can have. And as a sports person, as a professional sports person, that voice in your head, that's in your head now, you know, that was a good speech, and this is a bit boring, it's gone a bit long, I need to go to the bathroom, can I just... That voice is talking to you all the time, all the time. And if you can quieten your mind, it puts you in a very strong position to deal with any demons when you're down, and puts you in a very strong position to keep your feet on the ground when things are going well. So for me, it's always about controlling the voice in my head. As a player, that's a good pass, that's a bad pass, I need to run there, coach is yelling at me, players yelling, crowds yelling at me. If you let yourself be overwhelmed by that little voice in your head, I think it can very quickly become a slippery slope when things aren't going well. So when I think of my own mental strategy, it's about controlling the voice in my head. You know, I took up a new role at the committee for Adelaide starting next week, and I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I've only been in football, you know, but the ability to control the voice in my head and to understand yourself and know what good nervous energy is can really help propel you. Halima, mental health strategies, personally, professionally? How do you manage your mental health?
My mental health? Actually, I'm very strong.
And Anyier, any strategies on mental health? It's obviously a big issue.
Yeah, look, I agree with everyone. I guess one of the strategies that I've always had personally, and I have put this into my professional life as well, is always surround yourself with good people. I think your surrounding matters so much, and it allowed you to navigate yourself when there are challenges. It allowed you to connect and to think clearly when you have the right people around you, whether being in your personal capability or in your professional. And I think I have adapted very well. I always say this when I talk, I said, I've been blessed because I have recognized at an early age that I needed to have the right people around me in order for me to succeed in everything that I do in life. And I think that's a right way when it comes to talking about mental health issues, because pressures come from every walk of life. And when you don't have your foundation in place, it's easy to lose yourself. But when you have the right connection, it's easy for you to overcome those challenges, those barriers that you might face. So I think that will be the way to go for me.
Some good strategies, everyone. Nada, do you think we're having the right conversations in sport to address issues, or do you still feel that some topics are being avoided?
We are having some conversations, 12 years on in the country, and I see a great deal of improvement. Today is much better than yesterday, and this year is much better than the year before, I believe. Are we having all of the conversations that needs to be had? Not yet. Are we on the right track? Yes. But I may add a comment here. The question that was just before was about what are the barriers and the issues towards women coming from a different background. Let me tell you, these issues exist for Australian women too. In all sorts of sports, pretty much, being included. It's not just for her being from Afghanistan or her being from South Sudan or me being Egyptian. It's you being Australian as well. There is a great deal of not so much inclusion still happening, but we are working with it. And the more we talk inclusion, the more we are going to fix problems, immediate problems, and collateral problems. They are very important as well, but maybe we're not talking about them as much. But if we come together and think as one, because the reality is, there's no difference between me and you. You are just a human being, I'm just a human being. You're gonna live, you're gonna run your course in this earth, and then your time's up, and then it's the next generation, and then it's the generation after. No one is living here forever. No one is owning this land forever. It is, you have a purpose in this life. My purpose in this life is to ensure that I'm helping as much as I can, and to drive and deliver equality to everybody. This is what I think. So it's not just our problem, it's our problem. That's what I would like to add.
Bit difficult to follow on that one, Anyier, but how do you see it from your perspective? Are we having the right conversations to address the issues, or are we skirting around the edges?
Yeah, look, I agree too that I think we have come very far, looking back years ago. But we do need more conversations, and this is how it started. I think there are significant conversations that we are missing. And again, you have to look at from a layer. You have to look at from a local to national and to those who make decisions within the sport. I agree that we are all in this together, but we're not going to lie that the gaps exist within the sport industry when it comes to representation of others as well. The decision makers are the one need to be in this type of conversation. There are issues such as racism. We know a couple of years ago, this has taken so many problems. There's been data done on this. There's been conversation, but we do avoid it. And the people who avoid those type of conversations are the ones who make decisions, and those that need to be put on the table to have these type of conversations. And so we do have a problem, but we are getting there with this type of conversation. There's policies, there's gaps, issues that need to be addressed, and I don't think we should be afraid to have those conversations. And so that's where I think sometimes the problem lies in, that we try to avoid those significant issues that need to be addressed. But those are the only ways that are going to make us move forward a little bit. So that's where my advocacy come in often, to say that we must have this conversation. We can't avoid them. And so even though we're on the right track and we are doing better than 10 years, 15 years ago, the issues exist and they need decision makers to be on the table.
We're running out of time, so I think that's a nice note to finish on. But I'd like to invite Deb Stringer from ARA to provide a thank you.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. And I want to do a bit of boasting. I boasted to Bruce before that as a very unsporty person, which I think you can tell, I'm actually pretty proud of this program that we've created tonight. But interestingly, where it started for me is because we do have to mention AFL at some stage. I know soccer's had a good run tonight.
For once.
For once. But where this actually started in my head some months ago was thinking about a really amazing sports person called Majak Dor, who's South Sudanese born and who's a North Melbourne football player, who's a charismatic and a brilliant football player and a great role model for his community. But that had an enormous cost to him personally at one stage. And I'm not going to go into the details of his story, but if you followed his story, being a role model and being a superb athlete and being a part of an elite team comes at a cost sometimes. And I think we, as the white community that get so much out of the commitment of people from diverse backgrounds, we need to be conscious of what we ask of people when they're already having to negotiate so many things becoming part of the Australian community. So I think we do need to acknowledge some of that journey as well. But the other thing that I thought of was actually came out of a conversation with a staff person at ARA who's a Bhutanese background. And because the Bhutanese community has a Bhutanese soccer cup, they've actually got a multi-state cup coming up in October, as does the African Communities Council have the African Soccer Cup coming up later in the year, which we should have advertised. I can't see Dennis. Oh, there he is. Dennis, if anybody gets a chance to talk to Dennis after the forum tonight, please ask him about the African Communities Soccer Cup later in the year. But anyway, Amber's point was that they started their own Bhutanese soccer groups because they approached local sporting communities who basically weren't very generous and didn't offer them access to grounds or inclusion in their community. And sometimes that's because of resources. But if we're going to be an inclusive society and we want sport to be the great equaliser, we do need to look at how we are placing barriers in people's ways, in the way of communities to engage men, women and, of course, children and young people, because it's not like kids don't have enough to deal with without having safe places to play in the modern world, I guess. So I guess that was the point that I wanted to make, that it's up to us to check our local sporting clubs. You know, we've got kids and grandkids in sporting clubs. How inclusive are they? Have they encouraged participation from across the spectrum of their suburb or their school? So there is something we can all do to encourage that level playing field. So I just want to say some thank yous. In particular, I want to thank His Excellency the Governor, who's speaking of role models, I can't tell you how extraordinary his effect is on the, particularly the younger staff and the younger people in my team who have just are blown away that he is the Governor of South Australia, and I know that he's had a huge impact on in terms of representing the diversity of the community that is engaged in public life in South Australia. I don't think we can underestimate his significance as a role model, so thank you, Governor. Pauline Carr, Chancellor of the University of South Australia, thank you so much for being a wonderful co-host. Jacinta Thompson, Executive Director of the Bob Hawke Prime Ministerial Centre. And I think Jacinta and I are quite proud that we've shifted the way we are packaging this. We're no longer calling it the oration, we're calling it a conversation, because this isn't about one expert coming to speak to a group of people. This is about a conversation. It's about trying to encourage a diversity of views and to actually provide a platform for people who we may not normally get to hear from, such as Halima. But on behalf of all of us here, the Australian Refugee Association and the Hawke Centre, I want to particularly thank all of our speakers. Bruce Jete. I had not actually heard of Bruce until very recently through another forum, but I think we should be watching this young man and see where he goes. Thank you. I'm so glad that you are moving, not because you're not a great contributor to football, but you've also got clearly so much to offer the broader community. So all the best with your new job. And Halima, I've got a confession to make. I actually grew up in a rural part of South Australia where the only water were dirty dams, and my parents didn't swim, so I didn't learn to swim. And I think what you do is incredibly brave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Halima. And Nadir, we have known each other now probably for the 4 years that I've been involved in the refugee sector in South Australia, and I'm really embarrassed about how much you have grown, because it says, what are the rest of us doing while you're...
I didn't say anything.
You're growing. It's amazing.
Thank you.
You have really done an amazing job, and what you do, I'm glad we're partners, and I'm glad we're part of the same team. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And Anyier, I'm so sorry we don't get to meet you in person. Well, if you lived in South Australia, it would have been easy, but...
Next time.
But thank you so much, and I do hope we get to meet you in person. And good luck with the restrictions in New South Wales. Fingers crossed that you'll be safe and healthy, and that we will get an opportunity to see you at some stage. But thank you all so much for coming, and thank you. Before we head off, we're going to ask David Lynn, who's a former chair of Australia ARA, who was actually the chair when we first started the oration. He's going to say a few words. Thank you, David.
Your Excellency, Chancellor, ARA President, this isn't on the program, but what I was going to say, most of it's been said, so you could say sit down, but I do want to point out, if you'd done your sums, you'd have realised ARA is 45 years old. How long ago did our Governor arrive with his wife in Australia? ARA was very, very new, but ARA at that time was doing very, very basic work, as I saw it at the time, knocking on the doors of people who have arrived. Of more recent time, I'm not wishing to say ARA doesn't go out, but generally the situation now is people are directed to places like ARA. Doesn't downplay the roles, but it's a very different situation. I was going to point out the background to His Excellency's arrival in Australia, but he's told it much better than I could. What I think is important, as has just been said, is that here is a person with his wife who arrived in Australia 44 years ago and has become Governor of South Australia. And the point I wanted to make in being asking for this opportunity was to say, I can't do it any other way. I'm going to say Hugh because I know him so well. And I think it comes down to the personal level. During his governorship, Hugh and Lan have been patrons of what? Well over 1,000 organisations, many of them refugee related. Hugh has always stood with refugees in South Australia and probably throughout the country. Anytime I have met him while he has been governor, his first question to me, other than asking about my health, because that has been an issue, has been, how is ARA going? That's the quality of this man. He was the first orator, and I notice we've gone from an ARA annual oration now into a conversation. I think that's a very important and worthwhile change, and I congratulate you for that change. But I'm going to ask you to join with me, because tonight is probably the last function that our Governor will have directly with ARA and maybe even with the Hawke Centre. But speaking from ARA, I would ask you to join with me thanking our Governor for being such a wonderful advocate for refugees and for South Australians, in fact, for Australians. Please join me.